So, let's talk about the story and lore of Space Engineers 2 as we know it so far, because it is very interesting. I would like to quickly apologise for the lack of graphics of the stuff we're about to talk about. I'll run some B-roll in the background, but for a lot of what we're talking about, I only have text. I don't really have images or video to back any of it up. But I will of course show some visual examples of the stuff I'm talking about, if I have any to show. But whilst we're on the topic of Space Engineers 2 lore, at some point I did promise to do a Space Engineers 1 lore video. As I've mentioned, there is a lot of work going into it. I mean an awful lot of work going into it. So I've set a sub goal for it instead. That gives me plenty of time to work on it and make sure it can be the best version it can be. And also it gives you guys a challenge to get out as soon as possible and punish me for not doing it quick enough. That goal is 75,000 subscribers. So when you hit that, the lore video will drop the same day. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the lore of Space Engineers 2. Let's get the bit that everyone should know by now out of the way first. Space Engineers 2 takes place in the Almagest system, which is a binary star system 10,000 light years away from Earth. In 2083, humanity launched the Bearing Project, which was a one-way mission to send pioneers across space and to forge a new destiny among the stars. They were driven by a desire for freedom and scientific discovery, and waves of colonists left everything behind to build a new society in the distant Almagest system. Nearly 10,000 years in cryosleep later, in the year 11,983, the first colony ships arrived in the Almagest system. The Almagest system has at least 5 celestial objects in it. There's the Almagest star, which orbits the Delfos dwarf star in the centre of the system. There's 3 planets that we know about: Verger, a planet very similar to Earth, Chemic, a planet similar to Mars, and Byblos, which is an ocean world. Also, in the loading screen quotes, there seems to be some indication that there's a moon in this star system. The Vitus moon base wasn't just our first foothold in the Almagest, it was proof that anything was possible. So this implies that there's a moon, and I'm presuming Vitus is potentially the name of the base, or alternatively, it could be the name of the moon. We don't know at this time. I'm assuming it's the name of the base though. I'm going to read the next part out directly from the Space Engineers 2 announcement, as it's very important to get exactly what is said here. This section is about the new factions in Space Engineers 2. You'll encounter diverse groups, each with their own vision for this frontier. Astronauts Without Borders embody the ideals of cooperation, whilst the militaristic Legion of Engineers stands ready to defend humanity's progress. The isolated Ellickite communities, religious isolationists, and the Boatmen, a mysterious cult born of tragedy, add layers of intrigue and danger to your journey. And then below this, it talks about NPCs, main characters, and other secrets to discover. Secrets we'll discuss in a minute. First of all, the factions. We actually know a little bit more about all of them from the loading screen quotes, and there's a little bit about them in the lore of Space Engineers 1, and additionally, we've been given some screenshots of NPC designs, which are specifically tied to some of these factions. So let's go through some of these quotes. Each faction sees their own future for the Almagest, all are willing to fight for them. This seems to indicate there is some sort of conflict between each of the factions. Study a Legionnaire's work long enough, and you'll see echoes of ancient Roman engineering. In the Pioneer edition of Space Engineers 2, there are some Roman buildings shown in the files, so potentially these will be in-game, or maybe these are just testing the new build system, who knows. We were shown a design for an NPC in Space Engineers 2, and we were told this was a main character in the game, and based on this design, and the fact that we know that the Legion of Engineers is Roman themed, I would assume this character belongs to the Legion of Engineers, and if I had to imagine, if this is a main character, this is probably the leader of the Legion of Engineers. There are 2 significant characters of the Legion of Engineers mentioned in the files for the game. These are Dante Appian, who is the console of the Legion of Engineers, who would be the leader of their faction. Additionally, Dante Appian is the one who voices all the teasers for Space Engineers 2. And there is also Marie Gaia, who was a previous leader of the Legion of Engineers. This looks like a male design for an engineer, so I'm going to presume it's Dante, but who knows. The Legion of Engineers builds for tomorrow. The Astronauts Without Borders build for everyone. Now, we don't have much information about the Astronauts Without Borders, other than the fact they are mentioned in Space Engineers 1 in a datapad, which calls them hippies, for believing in freedom and equality and that kind of thing. Crazy. But based on other stuff we'll look at in a minute, it seems like these 2 are the 2 main factions in Space Engineers 2, the Astronauts Without Borders and the Legion of Engineers, both having opposite ideals to each other. Like with the Legion of Engineers, we have a picture of an Astronauts Without Borders suit, and you can see it's much more pared down than the Legion design, being more simple and less regal looking. I'm going to guess that the astronauts probably help the player out to begin with. That sounds like something they would probably do. Or maybe it's Fallout style and you have to pick between the Legion and the Astronauts Without Borders. Who knows? Astronauts Without Borders maintain detailed maps of the Almagest system. Some areas remain persistently blank. Very interesting. Sounds like a mystery's afoot. When a boatman offers you passage to the stars, decline. Quite simple and to the point. The fact that the Boatmen are a mysterious cult born of tragedy, and they seem to be like people you don't really want to associate with, my guess would be that as the colony ships arrive in waves, something happened to their colony ship. I'm going to guess at this point it crashed on the water planet Byblos, and whatever they had to do to survive changed them into what the Boatmen are now. I'm not saying they're necessarily boatmen and they drive around the planet on boats, because it says offer you passage to the stars, so potentially they have spaceflight as well, but boatmen, water planet, makes sense to me. 5,000 years of isolation changes a people. The Ellickites are living proof. Some say the Ellickites' isolation gave them insights we're only beginning to understand. The Ellickites are probably the most interesting faction to me in Space Engineers 2, as they seem tied to the central mystery of Space Engineers 2. There's 2 files in the Pioneer Edition in a folder called Factions, and these are Test 1 and Test 2, and as you can see here, they definitely look like a creepy religious isolationist base, especially with this weird esoteric artifact that appears in the middle, an artifact that seems very important to Space Engineers 2. Also, there are these weird pods everywhere. We don't really know what these are. We don't have any block that looks like them in Space Engineers 2, and we have now seen what the cryopod looks like, and it doesn't look like this either. So whatever this block is, it seems pertinent to this faction's identity, which makes me think that these bases belong to the Ellickites. The isolation part of the Ellickites is very interesting. The fact that it says 5,000 years in isolation, and it took us 10,000 years to get to the Almagest system, give or take, I'm guessing maybe something went wrong with their cryopods, and potentially they were stuck awake for the full 5,000 year journey here. Human civilization has only been around for like 10,000 years. Imagine a civilization spending half of that trapped in a single ship. That would make you lose your mind. The alternative is maybe they somehow got here 5,000 years before everyone else. We don't really know how the lightspeed travel to the Almagest works, so that is also possible as well. So, the planets. The flora of the planet Verger bears strange similarities to Earth's plant life, defying scientific explanation. Is this a little wink or a nod to the fact that Verger is just a modern version of the Earth-like planet in Space Engineers 2? Or potentially a clue to the secret of the Almagest? They say Verger's mountains hold secrets older than recorded history. Again, in the in-game files for Space Engineers 2, there's a picture of a side of a mountain, and the file is named Ruins v4. Now, I'm not saying this is the final version of it, you can clearly see the debug UI at the bottom, but this is definitely Verger, and these look very similar to the weird esoteric object we saw at the centre of the Ellickite room, and there's also a third example of this that we'll look at in a minute. And if you zoom in over here, there appears to be some sort of entrance to this facility. Very interesting. The waters of the planet Byblos run deep. What lies beneath is barely documented. The Legion archives tell of signals from deep within Byblos. None who've investigated returned. Every expedition into the planet Byblos' depths returns with different stories. Not all can be true. The quotes in the game seem to indicate there is definitely something hidden underneath the surface of Byblos, but unfortunately, we haven't even seen a picture of Byblos yet, so we have no idea of anything to do with it, other than the fact that it's going to be a water planet, and these 3 quotes that indicate there's some sort of mystery underneath it. But in the Pioneer Edition, there is another ruins picture, which you can see here, and you can see the weird esoteric designs of the blocks sticking out on the side. However, the reason I bring this up now is this on the right, I didn't recognise it until the other day, is the coral texture for Space Engineers 2. And what the heck is the coral texture doing in a weird ruin like this? Unless potentially it's underwater. This one might be a stretch, but man, when I looked at this and I spotted the coral texture on the right for the first time last week, I was convinced, guys. There's definitely something going on Byblos, and I can't wait to find out what it is. But this isn't the only celestial object in Space Engineers 2 that has some sort of weird mystery attached to it. Strange signals echo from the Delfos asteroid belt. Natural phenomena or something else? Those who venture too close to Delfos never return. The brown dwarf keeps its secrets. We know that Delfos, the brown dwarf, is at the centre of the Space Engineers 2 star system, and as I said in the video where we saw the map for Space Engineers 2, I'm guessing this is the final location we go to in the game, and where we find out the true mystery of the Almagest system. At this point, guessing what this is probably not possible. Maybe Delfos is a giant megastructure, and the brown dwarf appearance is to hide what it actually is. Maybe the asteroid belt around it contains stations or something that house more of these mysterious ruins. Or maybe it's just something simpler, and there's a space station hidden inside Delfos for us to find, as the final mystery of the game. There's 5 more quotes that tie into the mystery in Space Engineers 2. Not all the automated defences in the Almagest were built by modern hands. Implies there's some sort of precursors in this system. Some structures in the Almagest show signs of advanced engineering, yet their builders are nowhere to be found. The first colonists thought they were alone. Were they? The Napier was the first ship to arrive in the Almagest, or at least that's what's believed. That's 4 quotes back to back that all seem to indicate that there was a group in the Almagest system before we were. 2 possibilities on this. Aliens, obvious answer. Perhaps there was some sort of alien group that inhabited the Almagest system before we got there. Or number 2, whilst we were spending 10,000 years to get to the Almagest system, the people back on Earth invented a way of travelling even faster and they got here before us, and in that 10,000 years, they died out before we even got there. So there was an advanced civilization there, and it was us, but so much time has passed that we were gone again by the time we arrived. The advances in FTL technology is one of my favourite sci-fi tropes, so if it is this, I'd be very happy, but part of me just want it to be aliens so we can get more about the monolith. Now that we've got the general lore of Space Engineers 2 out of the way, there's one more set of things I want to cover, and that's what the story of Space Engineers 2 is actually going to be about. All this other stuff is just the backdrop to the story, but the actual story of Space Engineers 2 begins 10 years after the first colony ship arrives in the Almagest, and you as the player take the role of one of the arriving colonists on a ship called the Calypso. As you arrive, you wake up from cryosleep and your ship is attacked, and you and your player's brother try and help as many people as you can, and whilst you eventually survive the attack, based on the first time user experience where you crash land on a planet and have to rebuild a ship, I'm guessing the Calypso is destroyed. Two things to add to this is the fact that you have a brother and he's probably tied to the main story in some capacity. I'm going to presume he's some sort of NPC that helps the player out. Maybe that be with welding or combat and those kinds of stuff. And I presume he's just going to be there to demo the new NPC stuff in the new game. The fact that they're going to have an NPC that actually travels around with the player, I presume you can probably dismiss him if you need to. But the fact he's going to be there gives me high hopes of what NPCs can do in Space Engineers 2. And the second thing, because the Calypso is attacked, and Space Engineers 2 has a main quest, I presume their main quest is either going to be find the rest of the colonists on the Calypso, and presumably find who took them. The fact that we have so many hints to a mystery in Space Engineers 2, and whilst there are hints at hostile factions like the Boatmen and the Ellickites, neither of them seem sinister enough to be main quest worthy. They just seem to be weird people in the star system with us. So I'm guessing whatever attacks our ship is this mysterious precursor group that have been mentioned multiple times in the loading screens, that they have something to do with the Delfos star and underneath the water of Byblos, and they seem to have been here long before we have. I don't know, but I am very, very, very interested to find out. I'm sure we will definitely get more hints of the lore of Space Engineers 2 in the future, but even this small, little crumb of lore of Space Engineers 2 gets me really excited. I cannot wait to see what they do with this. If you want to keep up to date with the future of Space Engineers, lore, or just general updates, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. And also, you can become a Patreon or YouTube member with the links in the description below.